My wife left me for my cousin, but at Christmas dinner, I did this. I never expected to catch my wife cheating through a Ring doorbell notification. Sarah had told me she was working late that Thursday night. In March, the fourth Thursday in a row, she'd been swamped with deadlines. I believed her because that's what you do after 12 years of marriage. You believe, even when the doubt starts gnawing at your insides like a hungry rat. I was sitting on our sectional sofa, charcoal gray one we'd argued about at Pottery Barn, before compromising on the matching ottoman neither of us particularly wanted when my phone buzzed. A Ring alert. Motion detected at front door. It was 9:43 p.m. I tapped the notification without thinking, expecting to see a delivery person or maybe a neighbor's cat that kept triggering our motion sensors. Instead, the grainy night vision footage showed my wife and my cousin Marcus standing on our porch, his hands on her waist, her fingers tangled in his hair. They were kissing like teenagers, like the world was ending, like I didn't exist. I watched, paralyzed, as Sarah pulled back, laughing at something he whispered. She unlocked the door with her key, the key I had made with a special green Silicon Valley tech company logo because she kept losing hers. The same Sarah who had texted me 20 minutes earlier. Still working. Don't wait up. XO. The footage cut off as they entered our home. My home. The home I'd spent 11 years paying a mortgage on. The home where I'd nursed Sarah through pneumonia 3 winters ago, sleeping on the floor beside the bed because she was coughing too violently to lie down. The home where, just 2 months ago, we'd hosted my entire family for my mother's 65th birthday, including Marcus. Marcus. My best man. My childhood defender against neighborhood bullies. The cousin who'd borrowed nearly $3,000 from me last summer to fix his car, promising to pay me back as soon as his commission check cleared. The cousin who'd been coming over for Sunday football since we moved into this house. The cousin who apparently had been doing more than watching the Patriots when I wasn't around. I didn't confront them that night. I couldn't. Something primitive and self-preserving took over, and I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and left through the back door. I drove aimlessly for hours, eventually parking at a 24-hour Denny's where I ordered coffee. I didn't drink and stared out the window until the sky lightened from pitch black to charcoal gray. By morning, I had formulated a plan, if you could call it that. I would gather evidence. I would be strategic. I would not let emotion destroy what little control I had left. For 2 weeks, I lived a double life. I was Michael Wheeler, senior account manager at Talbot Financial, loving husband, homeowner. I made small talk over breakfast. I kissed Sarah goodbye each morning. I texted her during lunch breaks. I listened to her work stories over dinner. And I watched. I noted every late night at the office. I logged every drinks with coworkers. I recorded every running errands that took 3 hours instead of 1. I installed spyware on our shared computer. I checked credit card statements. I even followed her once, sitting in my Honda Civic 2 blocks from her office, watching as she walked not toward the glass building where she worked as marketing director, but to the boutique hotel 3 streets over. The evidence mounted. Hotel charges on her personal credit card, unexplained gaps in her location history, text messages to Marcus that were deleted but still accessible through our cloud backup. Miss you already. Still taste you on my lips. On a Tuesday night in late March, I finally confronted her. Sarah had just stepped out of the shower, her hair wrapped in one of our plush white towels, a wedding gift from her sister, when I placed my phone on the bathroom counter, opened to a screenshot of that damning text message. "What is this?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Sarah stared at the phone. She didn't grab it, didn't deny it, didn't burst into tears or beg forgiveness. She simply looked at the evidence of her betrayal, then at me, water droplets still clinging to her shoulders. "I think you know what it is," she said finally, reaching for her bathrobe. "With Marcus? My cousin? Are you serious, Sarah?" She tied the robe's belt with deliberate slowness. "I didn't plan this, Michael." "You didn't plan to sleep with my family member? It just happened? Multiple times? In our home? We connected at your mom's birthday?" she said, her voice clinical, detached. "We really talked while you were busy playing bartender for everyone. Do you know it was the first real conversation I'd had in months?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I spat. "I didn't realize our conversations about mortgage refinancing and your mother's hip replacement weren't intellectually stimulating enough." "That's exactly what I mean," she threw her hands up. "Everything between us is functional, logistical. When was the last time you asked me what I wanted? What I dreamed about? When was the last time we stayed up all night just talking? We've been married for 12 years, Sarah. We're not college kids anymore. And that's your excuse for letting our marriage turn into a business arrangement? I stared at her, this stranger in my bathroom, this woman who had shared my bed, my name, my life for over a decade. So this is my fault? I didn't provide enough deep, meaningful conversation, so naturally, you had to find it with my cousin? Along with whatever else you've been finding with him? Sarah didn't flinch. I fought it. For weeks I fought it, but there's something between us that I can't ignore. Something, I repeated. Something worth destroying our marriage for? Something worth betraying not just me, but our entire family? She looked at me then, really looked at me, with an expression I'd never seen before, pity mixed with resolve. I want a divorce, Michael. 5 words. Simple. Devastating. Final. Delivered while she stood there, folding a towel-me towel-like. This was just another Tuesday night discussion about the electric bill, or whose turn it was to call the exterminator. Just like that? I whispered. No, not just like that. I've been unhappy for years. I tried to tell you. All those conversations about maybe seeing a counselor, about feeling disconnected, you brushed them off. Said we were fine. Said every marriage goes through phases. I remember those conversations now, vaguely. Background noise I'd filtered out while thinking about work deadlines or fantasy football lineup. So instead of insisting, instead of trying harder to make me understand, you decided to sleep with Marcus? That's not fair. Fair? My voice cracked. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I have to picture my wife and my cousin together every time I close my eyes for the rest of my life? Is it fair that every family gathering from now until eternity is going to be tainted by this? Sarah looked away. I'm sorry you're hurt. I truly am. But I'm not sorry for finally choosing my own happiness. And Marcus makes you happy? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. Marcus, who can't hold down a job for more than 6 months? Marcus, who still lives in a studio apartment at 36? Marcus, who borrowed money from Mimini we earned together and never paid it back? He's changing, she said defensively. He's growing. He started his own business. I laughed, a harsh sound that startled both of us. His own business, right? The sports memorabilia thing? The one he's been starting for 3 years? You've never supported him, never believed in him. I was his best friend. I lent him money. I invited him into our home. As a project? Sarah countered. As someone you could feel superior to. Poor Marcus can't get his life together. Good thing Cousin Michael is here to dispense wisdom and financial advice. The accusation stung because there was a kernel of truth to it. I had felt a certain satisfaction in being the successful cousin, the one with the steady job and the nice house and the beautiful wife, the one who had it all figured out. So this is what? Some kind of revenge for how I've treated him? Or is he just a convenient escape hatch from a marriage you checked out of? Sarah shook her head. You still don't get it. This isn't about you. For once in my life, I'm making a choice that's just about me, what I want, what I need. And you need my cousin, I said flatly. I need someone who sees me, really sees me. She untucked a corner of the towel wrapped around her hair. I'm moving out this weekend. I've already found an apartment. An apartment, I repeated dumbly. You've been planning this. Yes, she admitted. For about a month now. A month. While I was scheduling our summer vacation to the Outer Banks, while I was researching anniversary gifts for September, while I was living our life, she'd been planning her exit. Does everyone know? I suddenly wondered. Have you told your parents, your sister, my family? The thought of being the last to know, of pitying glances behind my back, made my stomach churn. No one knows except Marcus, obviously. And Jen from work, she helped me find the apartment. Small mercies. At least I wouldn't have to face the humiliation of learning our entire social circle had been watching this drama unfold. When were you going to tell me? If I hadn't found out? Sarah ran a hand through her damp hair, releasing it from the towel. Friday, after you got home from work, I was going to have everything packed by then. How considerate, I said bitterly. Minimizing the awkwardness. I didn't want a drawn-out, ugly scene, I thought. I thought this way would be kinder. Kinder, I echoed. Nothing about this is kind, Sarah. We stared at each other across the bathroom tiles we'd selected together during our remodel 3 years prior. 12 years of marriage, reduced to this moment of icy clarity. It was over. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, she said finally. I can stay with Jen until the apartment is ready on Saturday. I nodded mechanically, unable to form words. Sarah gathered her toiletries, the expensive face cream I'd given her for Christmas, the leave-in conditioner she swore by, and walked past me without another glance. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in our king-size bed, staring at the ceiling fan we'd installed during the record-breaking heat wave of 2019, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of our house with Sarah in a different room. Tomorrow and all the days after loomed before me like a dark, uncharted wilderness. I moved through April and May in a fog. The divorce papers arrived in a manila envelope with Sarah's attorney's name emblazoned across the front. I signed them without reading every page. What was the point of contesting anything? I wanted it over. I wanted the bleeding to stop. Sarah moved out that first weekend of April, taking half our furniture and all of my dignity. She took the sectional sofa we'd argued about, the landscape paintings her mother had given us, the stand mixer she'd used exactly twice. She left me the bed we'd shared, which felt like a particularly cruel gesture. By early May, I learned from my mother, who had run into Sarah's mother at Target, of all places, that Sarah had moved in with Marcus, just across town. Less than a 10-minute drive from the home we'd built together. "I don't understand it," my mother said when she called to deliver this news, her voice tight with anger. "After everything you did for her, after everything you did for him." I had no answer. I had stopped trying to understand it myself. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the pity that followed. The way my coworkers avoided mentioning Sarah's name around me, conversations screeching to a halt when I entered the break room. The way my friends organized guys' nights that felt like suicide watches, their concerned glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The way my mother called every single day to check if I'd eaten, as though I'd regressed to helpless infancy. I lost 20 pounds without trying. My clothes hung off me like I was a child playing dress-up in his father's closet. I drank too much whiskey, the expensive kind Sarah had always complained about. Macallan 18, a small rebellion. I took up running at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep anyway, pounding the empty streets of our subdivision until my lungs burned and my legs trembled. The physical pain, a welcome distraction from the emotional one. Work became both salvation and curse. I threw myself into projects, volunteering for overtime, accepting assignments no one else wanted. My boss, Dan, called me into his office 6 weeks after Sarah left. "Wheeler," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Have a seat." I sat, bracing myself for criticism about a recent presentation or a missed deadline I wasn't aware of. "I'm concerned," Dan continued, leaning forward. "You're working 60-hour weeks. You look like hell. Everyone knows you're going through something difficult, but this," he gestured vaguely at all of me, "isn't sustainable." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're not fine, and that's okay, but I need you to take care of yourself." He pushed a business card across the desk. "Company's e-program, 3 free counseling sessions, completely confidential." I stared at the card. "I don't need therapy." "Maybe not, but you need something." Dan leaned back. "Take a few days off, get some sleep, see somebody, a professional, a friend, a family member, I don't care. But get some perspective. I have deadlines. We'll reassign them." "This isn't a request, Michael." I took the time off but didn't call the therapist. Instead, I drove to my parents' house 2 hours away and spent 3 days sleeping in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by swimming trophies and faded posters of bands I no longer listened to. My mother cooked all my favorite meals and didn't press me to talk. My father took me fishing on their neighbor's boat, the two of us sitting in comfortable silence for hours, catching nothing but finding something like peace. When I returned to work the following Monday, I'd gained back 3 pounds and lost some of the wild-eyed look that had prompted Dan's intervention. I settled into a new routine: work, gym, home, microwave, dinner, bed, rinse and repeat. Not living, exactly, but existing. Surviving. June brought the first real challenge: Sarah's birthday. For 12 years, I'd marked June 17th with flowers delivered to her office, dinner at her favorite restaurant, a thoughtfully selected gift. This year, I almost forgot the date entirely until Facebook's Memories feature helpfully reminded me of last year's celebration post. I spent that evening getting systematically drunk at O'Malley's, our neighborhood bar, while the Bartendera Community College student named Kyle, who knew nothing of my situation, kept the whiskey flowing and made vague, sympathetic noises when I began slurring maudlin reflections on love and betrayal. "You know what the worst part is?" I asked Kyle around midnight, 4 or 5 Macallans in. "I still miss her. Isn't that pathetic? She's probably with him right now, in his apartment, and I'm sitting here missing her." Kyle wiped down the bar. Not pathetic, man. Normal. My dad went through something similar when my mom left. Said it took him a year before he stopped reaching for her in bed every morning. A year, I groaned. I don't know if I can do this for a year. You can, Kyle said with the simple conviction of youth. One day at a time, right? That's what they say. Who says that? Alcoholics? Kyle grinned. Probably, but they might be onto something. I took his advice, though not intentionally. One day became 1 week, became 1 month. By July, the divorce was final. Sarah was officially no longer my wife, but Marcus would always be my cousin, which presented a unique problem I hadn't fully considered until my Aunt Helen called about Independence Day. We're having the usual barbecue, she said cautiously. The whole family will be there. And well, Marcus asked if he could bring Sarah. The casual way she said it, bring Sarah, not bring your ex-wife, made something twist painfully in my chest. And you're calling too? I let the question hang. Aunt Helen sighed. To see if you'll still come. You're my nephew too, Michael. I don't want to choose sides. But you've made your choice, haven't you, by allowing them to come together? What am I supposed to do? Tell my son he can't bring his girlfriend to a family event? Girlfriend. The word was a slap. No, I suppose you can't do that, I conceded. It's fine. I have other plans anyway. A lie, but a necessary one. Michael. Really, Aunt Helen, it's fine. Have a great 4th. I spent Independence Day alone on my back deck, drinking beer and watching distant fireworks bloom over the community park. I thought about Sarah and Marcus watching the same fireworks, maybe from the park itself, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. The image made me physically ill. July gave way to August, which dissolved into September. Our would-be anniversary came and went without acknowledgement. I considered texting Sarah something casual, like weird day, huh? But deleted the draft messages each time. What was the point? We were over. Moving on. At least, she was. I tried dating, if you could call it that. A setup with my coworker's sister. A few half-hearted Tinder matches. One particularly disastrous evening with the divorced mother of one of my nephew's classmates, where I drank too much wine and talked about Sarah for 2 hours straight. Unsurprisingly, none led to second dates. October brought another family landmine, my mother's birthday. Last year's celebration, where apparently Sarah and Marcus had connected while I played bartender, had been at my house. This year, my sister hosted at her place in the suburbs, a neutral location that wouldn't trigger memories for anyone. Will they be there? I asked my sister during the planning phase. No, she said firmly. I told Mom I wasn't comfortable with that, and she agreed. This day is about her, not about family drama. I was pathetically grateful for my sister's protectiveness. The party itself was subdued but pleasant. My mother seemed genuinely happy with the drone my sister and I had gone in on together. She'd recently developed an interest in aerial photography. We ate Italian food, drank good wine, and managed to go the entire evening without mentioning either Sarah or Marcus by name. As I was leaving, my mother walked me to my car. Her new cashmere wrap, a gift from my aunt, pulled tight around her shoulders against the October chill. You're doing better, she observed. You look better. Thanks, Mom. I'm trying. She reached up to smooth my collar, a gesture so maternal it almost broke me. I hate what they did to you. I hate that she's still in our lives through him. Mom. No, let me say this. Your father thinks we shouldn't talk about it, that it only makes it harder for you. But I'm your mother, and I need you to know that I see your pain. I see how unfair this all is. I swallowed hard. I know, Mom. And I need you to know something else. She gripped my arms, forcing me to look at her. You're going to be happy again. I promise you, this isn't the end of your story. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Now, she continued, her tone lightening. Thanksgiving is at our house this year. Small gathering, just us, your sister and Rick and the kids. No extended family, okay? Okay, I agreed. Sounds perfect. For the first time in months, I had something to look forward to. A holiday without the specter of Sarah and Marcus hanging over it. November arrived with unseasonable warmth and the final divorce settlement. Sarah had been fair in the division of assets, more than fair, really. She'd taken less than she was entitled to, a fact my lawyer seemed surprised by. Most people try to take their pound of flesh, he commented as I signed the final paperwork, especially when infidelity is involved. Maybe she feels guilty, I suggested. My lawyer, a balding man in his 50s, who'd seen every possible variation of marital dissolution, shook his head. In my experience, guilt doesn't typically translate to financial generosity. More often, it manifests as anger projected onto the wrong party, makes it easier to live with themselves. I thought about this as I drove home. Had I seen anger from Sarah? Not really. Just detachment. Like I was a chapter she'd already finished reading, a show she'd stopped watching mid-season. I was part of her past, not even important enough to resent. Thanksgiving came and went, exactly as my mother had promised. Small, intimate, Sarah and Marcus, free. For a few hours, surrounded by my immediate family, I almost felt normal again. My 5-year-old niece insisted on sitting next to me at dinner, regaling me with elaborate stories about her kindergarten adventures. My 3-year-old nephew fell asleep in my lap during the football game. My sister and brother-in-law argued good-naturedly about Christmas plans. My parents exchanged the comfortable, knowing glances of a couple who had weathered 40 years of marriage. It was during this peaceful interlude that the next bombshell dropped. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Helen. Christmas dinner at our house this year. The usual crowd. Would love to have you there. Please think about it. I hadn't considered Christmas yet. Hadn't allowed myself to think about the holiday Sarah and I had always made special, with our own private traditions. Christmas Eve, Chinese food, stockings filled with ridiculous dollar store items, mimosas with breakfast. I didn't respond to the text right away. I needed time to consider my options. Decline. And spend Christmas alone while imagining the entire family gathered without me? Or accept and face the excruciating reality of Sarah and Marcus together at a family function? The next morning, Aunt Helen called. "Did you get my text?" she asked without preamble. "Yes, I was going to respond today, I'm not sure." "Michael," she interrupted, "I know this is asking a lot, but you're my nephew too, and Christmas won't be the same without you." The two stung a reminder that Marcus was the primary nephew, the blood relation. I was now the optional family member, the one who might be edited out of future family photos and holiday gatherings. "I appreciate that, Aunt Helen, but I'm not sure I'm ready to—" "They're engaged," she blurted. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Marcus proposed last weekend. They're getting married in the spring." Her voice softened. "I wanted you to hear it from family, not through the grapevine." Engaged. Not even a year after our separation. While we'd still been legally married for part of their relationship, the timeline made me dizzy. "Michael, are you there?" "Yes." My voice sounded strange, distant. "Thank you for telling me. I understand if you don't want to come to Christmas now," she said gently. "No one would blame you." I should have said no. Any sane person would have. But something inside me, something dark and simmering made me say yes instead. "I'll be there," I promised. Wouldn't miss it for the world. After I hung up, I sat on my kitchen floor and laughed until I cried. Of course they were engaged. Of course they couldn't wait a respectable amount of time. Of course this humiliation would be paraded in front of the entire family at Christmas, of all times. For the next month, I planned. Not revenge, I told myself, just closure. Just a way to take back control of my narrative. Just a way to walk into that dining room with my head held high, to show everyone that they hadn't broken me. I bought a new suit, charcoal gray, with a subtle window pane check that the salesman assured me was very now. I got an actual haircut at a salon instead of the chain place I usually went to. I started using the expensive gym in the financial district instead of the basic one near my condo, pushing myself through punishing workouts that left me too exhausted to think. I practiced responses to potential questions. "How am I doing?" "Great, actually. Work is keeping me busy." "And dating anyone?" "Nothing serious, just enjoying meeting new people." "And Sarah and Marcus? I wish them all the happiness they deserve." The last one delivered with just the right amount of ambiguity. I bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, including a special one for Aunt Helena first edition cookbook by her favorite chef that I found on eBay after weeks of searching. I even got small, impersonal gifts for Sarah and Marcus. A gift card to a home improvement store. Let them interpret that however they wanted. By December 23rd, I'd lost the weight I'd gained back, and then some. My new suit had to be taken in. My face had lost its softness, cheekbones I hadn't seen since college emerging beneath newly disciplined skin. I looked different. Older in some ways, but more vital, more present. On December 24th, I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house, where I'd be spending Christmas Eve before we all went to Aunt Helen's the next day. My mother was taken aback by my appearance. You've changed," she said, studying me. "Are you eating?" "Yes, Mom, I'm eating. I'm working out. I'm taking care of myself." "You're sure about tomorrow? We can still cancel. Say you're sick." "I'm sure," I told her. "It's time to face this." That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the same ceiling I'd stared at last summer when the wound was fresh. Tomorrow, I would see them together for the first time. Tomorrow, I would congratulate them on their engagement. Tomorrow, I would reclaim my place in the family, separate from my identity as Sarah's ex-husband. By Christmas morning, I was ready, not just prepared, but actually genuinely ready. The anger that had propelled me through the fall had burned down to something cooler, more controlled. I wasn't doing this to hurt them or to prove anything to them. I was doing it for me. My father stopped me as I was adjusting my tie before we left. "Your mother's worried about you," he said. "Says you're too calm about all this." I smiled. "Tell her that's a good thing." He studied me, this man who had taught me how to tie a tie, how to change a tire, how to be a husband. Is it an act, this calm? I considered the question. It was, I admitted. At first. But now, I think maybe it's real. He nodded, satisfied. "Good, that's good." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Let's go show them what Wheelers are made of." As we pulled up to Aunt Helen's Tudor-style home, festooned with Christmas lights and holiday wreaths, I took a deep breath. For better or worse, this day would mark the beginning of the next chapter of my story. A story that, despite Sarah and Marcus's best efforts, would not be defined by betrayal. I stepped out of the car into the crisp December air, squared my shoulders, and walked toward the front door. Let the Christmas dinner commence. If you're enjoying this story, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with friends who appreciate emotional drama. Your support keeps these stories coming. Aunt Helen's house looked like a Hallmark movie set. White Christmas lights outlined the roof and windows. A wreath adorned the front door. Inside, the smell of pine and cinnamon wrapped around me like a hug I didn't deserve. I stood on the doorstep for a moment, gathering my courage, before pressing the doorbell. The chimes played the first notes of Carol of the Bells, a custom installation my uncle had been particularly proud of last year. Aunt Helen opened the door, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. "Michael!" She embraced me, holding on a beat too long. "I'm so glad you came." I handed her the bottle of wine I'd brought, the expensive kind Sarah always said was showing off. My aunt's eyes widened slightly at the label. "Well, aren't we fancy tonight?" she said with a wink, trying to keep things light. Come in. Everyone's in the living room." I followed her inside, removing my coat and handing it to my teenage cousin Ellie, who was on coat duty. She gave me an awkward smile, the kind reserved for adults going through messy situations children don't fully understand. The house was transformed, as it was every Christmas. The 12-foot tree dominated the living room, dripping with ornaments collected over decades of family Christmases. Garlands wrapped the staircase banisters. Candles flickered on every surface. My uncle had outdone himself with the decorations this year, perhaps an attempt to distract from the family drama playing out beneath them. "Michael!" My uncle clapped me on the back as I entered the living room. "Good to see you, son. What can I get you to drink?" "Scotch neat," I replied. "Whatever you've got." As my uncle moved toward the makeshift bar, my nieces and nephews swarmed around me, oblivious to the tension vibrating through the house. 7-year-old Tyler showed me his new remote control car. 5-year-old Emma insisted I admire her Christmas dress, twirling so the skirt flared out around her. Even teenage Jaden, usually too cool for family interaction, gave me a fist bump. And then I saw them. Sarah wore a red sweater I'd never seen before. Her hair was different, shorter, with caramel highlights that caught the light from the Christmas tree. A small diamond sparkled on her left hand, smaller than the one I'd given her 13 years ago, I noted with petty satisfaction. Marcus had his arm around her waist. His fingers splayed possessively against her hip. They stood in the corner of the living room, awkwardly holding champagne flutes, trying to look anywhere but at me. Everyone was watching us. My parents, who had arrived earlier, my sister and her husband, Aunt Helen and Uncle Dave, all the cousins and their spouses, everyone waiting for the explosion, the shouting, the scene that would ruin Christmas and give them something to talk about until next December. I took a deep breath and walked directly toward them. Marcus flinched visibly. Sarah's knuckles went white around her glass. The room fell silent, conversations pausing mid-sentence. I extended my hand to my cousin. "Merry Christmas," I said, my voice steady. Confusion flickered across Marcus's face as he hesitantly shook my hand. I turned to Sarah. "You look well." She blinked rapidly, thrown off balance by my civility. "Thank you. You too. You look different." "Good different, I hope," I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Yes," she said softly. "Good different." The collective tension in the room eased by a fraction. Conversations resumed, though I could feel everyone still watching us from the corners of their eyes. My aunt announced dinner would be served in 15 minutes. I moved toward the kitchen, offering to help with the gravy. "Oh, would you?" Aunt Helen sounded relieved. "You always make it better than I do." In the relative safety of the kitchen, I stirred the gravy, adding a pinch more salt and a splash of Worcestershire sauce, the secret ingredient my grandmother had taught me. Aunt Helen busied herself with the rolls, sneaking glances at me. "I've been worried about you," she finally said. "I know," I replied, focusing on the gravy. "Everyone has." "Are you really okay with all this?" She gestured vaguely toward the living room. I considered my answer carefully. "I'm getting there, one day at a time." She squeezed my arm. "You're a good man, Michael Wheeler. Better than most would be in this situation." When the call came to take our seats for dinner, I braced myself for another awkward moment. Where would they put me in relation to the happy couple? But Aunt Helen had thought of everything. I was seated between my sister and my cousin Jessica, with my back to Sarah and Marcus, who were placed at the opposite end of the long table. Throughout dinner, I was polite, engaged. I laughed at my uncle's terrible jokes. I complimented my aunt's cooking. I asked my cousin Lisa about her new job in Seattle. I was the very picture of a man who had moved on. The food was exceptional, as always. Turkey and ham. 3 kinds of potatoes. Green bean, casserole, and cranberry sauce and stuffing. The comfort foods of childhood, now tinged with new, complicated emotions. When it came time for dessert, pumpkin and pecan pies with homemade whipped creamy, Aunt insisted everyone share something they were grateful for this year. A family tradition I'd always found cheesy, but now seemed poignant. My turn came last. I stood, raising my glass. Everyone looked at me with trepidation. Sarah stared at her plate. Marcus fidgeted with his napkin. "This year taught me that life doesn't always go as planned," I began. "I lost someone I thought would be by my side, forever." The room went silent. Even the children sensed the weight of the moment. "But I gained something too." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I discovered my own resilience. I learned who my true friends are. I found strength I didn't know I had." I looked directly at Sarah for the first time all evening. I'm grateful for second chances, for new beginnings, and for the realization that happiness isn't about who's in your life, it's about how you live it. I raised my glass higher. "So here's to the future. May we all find what we're looking for." No one expected that, especially not Sarah, whose eyes had filled with tears. Not Marcus, who couldn't meet my gaze. They'd wanted me broken. They'd expected rage. My dignity was the last thing they thought I'd bring to Christmas dinner. After dessert, as everyone moved to the living room for gift exchanges, Sarah cornered me in the hallway near the guest bathroom. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice low. "Just for a minute." I nodded, following her into the small study off the main hallway. She closed the door partway, leaving it cracked open proper, considering our history and her current engagement. "I wasn't sure you'd come today," she said, standing with her arms crossed. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "Your speech, did you mean it? About second chances and moving on?" I studied her face, this face I'd woken up to for 12 years, now somehow both familiar and foreign. "Yes," I said simply. "I meant it." She looked away. "I keep waiting for you to explode, to make a scene, to tell everyone what terrible people we are. Would that make you feel better, if I played the bitter ex-husband?" "No," she said quickly. "No, of course not. It's just, it would be understandable." "Maybe," I conceded, "but it wouldn't help me move forward." She was quiet for a moment. "I never meant to hurt you, Michael." The absurdity of this statement nearly broke my carefully constructed composure. "What exactly did you think would happen when you slept with my cousin behind my back?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you trying to ease your conscience now. You made your choice, Sarah. You chose him." I gestured toward the living room where Marcus was probably unwrapping the gift card I'd bought them. "You don't get to feel better about it just because I'm not making a scene at Christmas dinner." "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you fighting back? I looked at the woman I'd loved for 12 years, the woman who'd thrown it all away. Who says I'm not angry? I replied softly. But I refuse to let that anger define me. You and Marcus have to live with what you did. I just have to live. A knock on the door interrupted whatever response she might have had. My mother peered in, her eyes narrowing slightly at finding us alone together. They're opening presents in the living room, she said pointedly. Everyone's waiting. We'll be right there, I assured her. When my mother left, Sarah reached out as if to touch my arm, then thought better of it. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for being with Marcusi, can't apologize for following my heart, but for how it happened. For not being brave enough to end things cleanly before it started. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. And Michael? She added, her voice soft. I hope you meant what you said about finding happiness. You deserve that. I stepped around her and rejoined the family in the living room, where Uncle Dave was playing Santa, distributing gifts from under the tree. The next hour passed in a blur of torn wrapping paper and exclamations of delight. My aunt was genuinely moved by the vintage cookbook I'd found for her. My nieces and nephews were thrilled with the science, kits, and art supplies I'd carefully selected. When it came time for Sarah and Marcus to open my gift to them, I watched with detached curiosity. Marcus looked wary as he tore the paper, revealing the gift card to Home Depot. For your new place, I explained evenly. Everyone needs home improvement at some point. Thank you, Sarah said, seeming uncertain about my intentions. That's very thoughtful. Practical? I corrected with a smile. I've always been practical. As the evening wound down, I helped clean up the wrapping paper debris and carry dishes to the kitchen. I hugged my aunt goodbye, thanked her for dinner, and promised to call more often. I shook hands with my uncle and male cousins, embraced the female ones, and ruffled the hair of all the children. I saved Sarah and Marcus for last, approaching them as they gathered their coats. Congratulations again on your engagement, I said, loud enough for others to hear. I wish you both well. Marcus looked like he might say something meaningful, maybe even apologize. But in the end, he just mumbled, "Thanks, man." Sarah held my gaze a moment longer. "Take care of yourself, Michael." "Always do," I replied lightly. And then I walked out, head high, spine straight, to my car parked at the curb. My parents followed, my father clapping me on the shoulder with pride, my mother wiping away tears she tried to hide. "You were magnificent," she whispered as she hugged me. "I've never been prouder." I drove home through the quiet, snow-dusted streets, Christmas lights twinkling in windows of houses filled with families celebrating together. The radio played carols, and for once, I didn't change the station when "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" came on Sarah's favorite. Somewhere around the county line, I realized something. I hadn't been acting. Somewhere between planning my dignified appearance and actually executing it, the performance had become real. The weight that had pressed on my chest since March felt lighter. I hadn't attended that dinner to show them I was okay. I'd gone to prove it to myself. And for the first time in 10 months, I actually believed it. When I reached my condo, the emptiness didn't seem quite as hollow as it had that morning. I poured myself a small glass of the Macalana celebration, not an escape, and raised it in a silent toast to survival. Tomorrow would bring a new day. Next week, a new year. The future stretched before me, unwritten and full of possibilities I hadn't been able to see when I was drowning in betrayal. Sarah and Marcus had their story. Now it was time to write my own. As I got ready for bed that night, I deleted the dating apps from my phone. I wasn't ready yet, but I would be. And when I was, I'd do it the old-fashioned way, meeting someone in person, learning them slowly, building something real. I fell asleep easily for the first time in months, without the aid of whiskey or exhaustion. In my dreams, I stood alone on a beach at sunrise, watching the beginning of a new day, feeling the promise of healing in the warmth spreading across the horizon. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well. It's moving forward. It's finding peace despite those who tried to take it from you. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do at Christmas dinner is simply show up as the best version of yourself. Reintentar Claude puede cometer errores. Por favor, verifique las respuestas.